So welcome to the September 12th, 2021 episode, event, worship service, whatever you want to call it, of the North Texas Church of Freethought. September 12th happens to be an important date in history from the standpoint of the Lascaux cave paintings. And as many of you may know, they're in France. We'll get to that in a minute. And I could also call this a tale of two World Heritage Sites, Lascaux and Bamiyan. Before we go further, if you're on YouTube later, please do like us, click the little bell and so forth, and other buttons and so forth, so that you hear about us. And also go to our website at www.churchoffreethought.org and learn more about us. We have been around for many years. We're out to reboot, reimagine. I'm trying to think of the best term. I've been thinking about this, to reboot, reimagine, re-engineer, begin religion over again, but we aim to change religion away from it being some kind of superstitious claptrap. It doesn't need to be that, is what we say. So Lascaux and Bamiyan, what are these things? Lascaux is in southwestern France. As you see, they're just a ways east of Bordeaux, and on the bottom left you see where France is. Of course, it's in Europe. Well, on September 12th, 1940, a boy had lost his dog, some of the accounts say a couple of days previously, but apparently the dog located the entrance to this cave of Lascaux. And when they went into the cave, here's the entrance to the cave back when, and I believe one of those people, because one of the people who early explored the cave was a Catholic priest. Bear that in mind. That figures in what we're going to talk about here. Catholic priest. They go down into the cave. Here's what the cave entrance looks like now, because it turned into a tourist place. It's a huge cave. It goes for a long, long ways, and they have all these chambers that they call things like Hall of the Bulls and so forth. And this is why, because they found tons and tons, many hundreds of images, drawn images from prehistoric times of animals that lived in Europe at the time, including rhinoceros. Interestingly, they did not find any drawings of reindeer, which was the chief food of the cave artists, but they found lots of horses and aurochs and some birds and other things, and one animal that looks like maybe could be a unicorn, but who knows? Nobody knows why these paintings were put up. There's all kinds of speculation about maybe it was religious in nature, maybe it was done in order to improve the results of the hunt, or maybe it was just done for fun. Or what were these chambers used for? Did a large number of people gather, or was it just a few people going down there to work magic? And of course, as we know, the golden calf was an idol that had to be destroyed in the Old Testament, and lots of religions are against representations of animals and especially people. But here's all this sort of thing going on, and it's just mind-blowing to think about the fact that people were going down into this area for probably hundreds, if not thousands of years, and adding to these paintings. Some areas there's a lot of painting over, like maybe there was something going on there. Maybe when they painted in that area, they just happened to have better results in their hunting, and so they figured, well, this is the place to make the images or something, much that we'll just never know. But then, long after these paintings were made, what happened? People moved away. The last person that remembered where this location was died, and then it just sat for thousands of years until it was discovered on this very day in 1940. Just an amazing place. Giant caverns with all this cave paintings. This is not something where it's like a petroglyph that you might see out west. There's lots of those places where somebody just walks up to a cliff and scratches something. There was a lot of time and effort went into this. And just like when you look at the Sistine Chapel, you think, how did Michelangelo get way up there on the ceiling? Well, we know how he did it. How did these people do it? We don't know. Here's one of the passageways. You see the place is just loaded with all this prehistoric art. Lots of details, and you can find these pictures on the internet. That's where I pulled them off of. Lots of horses. They weren't riding horses then. Horses were just wild animals. Probably killed them and ate them. I believe that's an auroch. You see the superimposition of different animals there. This is a reproduction. It turns out that they developed problems with degradation of the art in the original cave, which was closed to visitors 50 years or more ago. And so there are 2 or 3, maybe I think 4 different replicas, exact replicas of the Lascaux cave. And you see the floor is definitely no longer a cave, but they've reproduced exactly all of the art. Imagine something that you would draw today being reproduced thousands of years in the future because people are so interested in it. Just, you know, again, mind-blowing things to think about. Here they are, exactly reproducing it, making a replica, and one of the replicas is actually portable and has traveled around the world. I don't know if any of you know of that or might have happened to see it somewhere. Afterwards in the discussion, I'd like to hear that. Again, reproduction to scale. I mean, an exact replica of the cave. And here's some of the work that goes into making these replicas. Again, making the replicas. And again, you'd have to think about how did the prehistoric people get up there? And they didn't have modern lighting either. All replicas here. Looks like the original thing. It's an exact replica. Okay, so now on to Bamiyan. What's Bamiyan? Well, Bamiyan is a place along the Silk Road, as you see in the Hindu Kush area. It's a ways west, almost due west of Kabul in Afghanistan, which we've been hearing a lot about Afghanistan recently. These are some sandstone cliffs in that part of the world. And in that part of the world, in those cliffs, were, past tense, carved giant statues of Buddha. And they date from the 4th and 5th centuries. One of the dating methods came up with a date that they were created around 600 CE. And that's a long ago black and white image. Look at the people and the person on horseback on the lower left. You can see how enormous these statues are. There was a greater and a smaller, and these were the largest statues, Buddhist statues, in the world at the time. Here's a more close-up area. They did get somewhat degraded over the years, just like in Texas where people shoot at traffic signs and so forth. People did use them for target practice, but these are pretty sturdy things hewn into the actual cliffs of this location. You see the images across the top, and then on the lower left you see that's the Taliban blowing up these statues, which they did in March of 2001, a few months before the 9/11 attacks. So we heard all about the 9/11 attacks yesterday on the 20th anniversary. I don't remember hearing anything in March, the anniversary of the destruction of these statues. And the lower middle picture, of course, is the empty alcove. They had a time of it destroying these statues. And on the right, those are not the Taliban admiring their work. If you look, those fragments of those giant statues are wrapped in fabric material, and those are people from the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. They managed to be able to wrap up all these pieces of rock and debris down to the size of your fist. And those are all in storage, and there's been talk for years about rebuilding and reconstituting these statues. But quite a contrast from the Lascaux caves, which were immediately recognized as being valuable, looked at by tourists for years, and now not even allowed to be looked at because of concern that they might be damaged. And here, these statues were deliberately blown up. And this is what the site looks like now, where They're just empty alcoves where those giant statues used to be. It turns out there's a lot of other art in those alcoves and in the region. This is considerably degraded, but a lot of intricate art. And it turns out when they've analyzed some of the pigments and materials that this art was created with, that it appears to be probably the oldest oil paintings in the world, because they found drying oil mixed with pigment in this. So this would have predated oil painting that occurred in Europe hundreds of years later by a long period of time. And there's some more. You see the pretty vibrant colors. You can imagine what it might have looked like in the original before it became all neglected and so forth. And in fact, definitely can make out the Buddha here. And it's been said that the original Buddha statues were also colored and were much more dramatic. This is a recreation with laser light of one of the statues that the Taliban blew up in 2001. So they have meetings, and many plans, discussions have been had about what to do. Could these statues be reconstructed in their original places? And some people have said, no, leave them empty. It's a testament to religious intolerance and stupidity that destroys valuable, meaningful, and important artifacts from the past. And I lied. I said this would be a tale of 2 World Heritage sites, but actually here's a third. This is a mausoleum that is in Timbuktu, in the country of Mali, in Africa. And these structures came under attack also by Islamist fanatics. This is what they did to these mausoleums, just tore them down and destroyed them. They actually did put somebody on trial who, at trial, apologized for doing it, but they're gone. And there's been talk about trying to rebuild these too, but let's face it, talk is different than actually doing it. So, and there may not be that much to look at, but these things have historic value. Imagine somebody going out into the American West and destroying some Pueblo Indian site, which many of the Pueblo Indian sites look a lot like that picture on the left, don't they? On this cartoon, this is how some people feel about culture, at least culture that's not their own. When the Taliban blew up the Buddhas, one of the Taliban leaders, the one who ordered it, said, well, we Muslims let all kinds of things like that stand. We're not against them. It's just when people came and said they wanted to help preserve them, we said, well, give us the money instead for starving children and the things we need for our people. And they said, no, that we want to spend this money on the statues. So he decided to blow them up. And I thought immediately when I read that, how much money did they spend building their minarets? How much money did they spend building all their Muslim stuff and even tearing down other things in order to build their stuff on top of it? So that's a poor excuse to say, oh, because we care more about children and people being able to eat. I think we know the answer to that question. Yes. And as we know, arguments about which supernatural system, supernaturalist doctrines are correct or not correct is often at the root of it. Yeah, they have other things that people hate each other about too. Your skin is darker than mine. You have this part of your anatomy and I don't, and blah, blah. But yes, it is very easy to turn people against each other, and a lot more effort should be devoted to, I think, educating people when they're young, educating our children about human differences and how little they mean compared to the things that draw us together and make us alike. This was Voltaire's observation, and this came out of his going and living in England for a while. He got into some trouble in France, and at that time he was not a wealthy man. He was beaten up, and so he fled to England to keep from being killed. and he made a whole lot of money in the financial business there. And one of the things he noticed is that the people in the marketplaces and the trading floors, people were there doing financial transactions and so forth, they all got along just fine, even though there were many people of different religious persuasions. And this was his observation. If there were only one religion in England, there would be danger of despotism. If there were two, they would cut each other's throats. And we know that at one time there was mainly two, and they did cut each other's throats for quite a while. But by the time of Voltaire, he says there are 30, and they live in peace and happiness. So again, I think that we freethinkers have our work cut out for us, but the biggest religion is something Milgan sometimes brought up, is money, material well-being. And if we all are after more material well-being, keep our children safe and educate them and make sure they have what they need and what everybody has to thrive and survive, then a lot of these stupid religious legacies of differences and hatred, it is to be hoped, could melt away. So our principles, just reiterating those, reason that we believe as freethinkers in making sense of things. And that doesn't mean there's one sense of things. We're constantly, if you don't have a eureka moment every day or every week or at least every month, then there's something wrong with you. I mean, making sense of things, figuring things out is one of our chief pleasures in life. And that is enjoyment. That is how we pursue happiness. And that differs too. We all find happiness in different things, and we should be glad of that and not worry about it and stop saying, oh, you're wasting money on this and I'm investing it in this over here. We appreciate various things. There are so many things to appreciate, and we discover the good all in different ways. And when we come together, we can share with each other what we personally consider to be the good, what we find to appreciate. And when we find someone else who can appreciate as we do, that's great. If you don't, there's somebody else. And even the people that may not appreciate what you appreciate may go on next week, next month, or 10 years from now and discover something in there that you find valuable. And of course, it all is on a foundation of love. And that is the exploration of what meaning and purpose are, what we mean by meaning and purpose. We cannot have meaning and purpose given to us by anyone, not even an omnipotent deity. We have to find it for ourselves. I'm sorry, it's just going to take a little work, but it's fun work. As we move on to discussion, we've looked at this picture a few times in the past, and just remember that not just politics, but just the things I was talking about too, our different preferences and ways of looking at the world. We should try to appreciate where other people are coming from and not let politics and some of these kinds of differences ruin civility. Because incivility hurts all of us, and especially the people who are the most uncivil, not being respectful of others. Aristotle was a very smart man. He said, it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. And there's some interesting things that have been said about this, even to try to understand the mind of someone who would blow up Buddhist statues instead of hating them, to try to think, how did their mind get that way? And just because you consider it does not mean you turn into them. This is the way of freethinkers. And remember too that we are embodied minds. It's not just what we say, what's going on in our thoughts, but how we feel. And when we feel anger rising, well, that's a time to reapply thinking and try to make sense of that too. Our voice, our intonation, posture, and behaviors all have to do with how we relate to others, and in important ways as well. And then finally, Freethought is not free. Please visit, donate at our church website. We depend on your continued support. I had an interesting thought this morning, was listening to the radio, and it was a gardening show, and the guy said that his sponsors this and his sponsors that, and then he mentioned about paying for the airtime, and I realized this guy's paying for his airtime, and he went out and got sponsors to help him, to promote on the air. Gosh, that would be something we could do. Something to think about. Visit us on Facebook and Twitter. We don't have a lot of traffic on those areas, but sign up at facebook.com, North Texas Church of Freethought, and twitter.com at NTCOF, and of course our website. We do depend on your continued support, not just your financial support, but your support in all ways. So promote your values by supporting our church. It's your church. Because we can do together what none of us can do on our own, or at least we can't do it as simply or as effectively on our own. And we're still running our special discount. Use the code ThinkNow, and you only have to tithe 8% of your total income. That's a 20% off from the usual 10%. Aha. Join with us in promoting facts and reason and celebrating not faith, but doubt, questioning everything. And we should demonstrate our commitment by being the future that we wish to see. So thank you very much and good morning. And with that, we'll move on to discussion. I'm very interested to hear what Nogan would say about preservation of important art in Turkey, because it seems like we haven't heard of any terrible stuff coming out of there. Is it because Turkey is more religiously diverse? How much diversity is there in the Islamic world? I think these are interesting questions that would benefit us to know more about. Thank you, everyone.